Ewing, and I'm a choreographer and a creative coder. I make contemporary dance performances that use interactive technology to activate projections in real time during the performance. What this means is that the dances and the performances that I make are inside immersive environments with geometric patterns that move and morph depending on how the dancers move in each performance. I started dancing when I was 5, simultaneously learning the logic and building blocks of technique for classical ballet and contemporary dance, and also starting to understand the magic of live performance. I left home at 16 to study my craft in New Zealand, and then moved to the United States when I was 20 to pursue my profession. My first interaction with code was in 10th grade, and they taught us a line of code that enabled us to change the color of a turtle similar to this as we clicked the button on our mouse. And I remember thinking that I wasn't quite sure when in life that was going to be something that I needed to know how to do, but I remember being really excited that this one sentence could create and change an image on the computer screen. About 5 years ago, I fell back into code. I was doing some updates on a CRM database for the dance school that I worked at, and at the start it was nothing very exciting, just adding in a couple of fields and a little bit of automation here and there. But what I found really exciting was these really simple lines of code, which is a very logical and often quite basic version of English, could create these amazing changes within the database. Just a couple of well-crafted lines could really reach deep inside of the database and pull out information about the children that we were training and about their schedules and about really up to about 10 years of their life in the organization, and we could create these amazing stories with that information. At the same time, I founded my contemporary dance company, Ewing Dances, and we had started to make work in DC and also to tour that work around the States. What I love about making work is being in the studio with the dancers. I love the way that we have this really creative, rich time, and that we also then can move into this very analytical and logical space where we think about how specific movements might be interpreted by the audience, and also how specific sections may follow another or not follow another in order to best tell the narrative. And this combination between magic and logic, that in the technology sense was this really simple version of English that created these magical changes in reporting, and in dance allowed us to have this freedom of movement but know that the audience was going to be able to understand the stories that we were trying to tell. And as I kept working with these two mediums, I kept wondering, when am I going to be able to bring these two things together? They're both super creative and they're both about creating these vast worlds. When am I going to have this all happen on stage at the same time? And that's when I found motion tracking technology. technology allows us to follow the X, Y, and Z coordinates of a dancer on stage, as well as a couple of other pieces of data about velocity or their relationship to another dancer on stage, and use that data as the math that then goes into the algorithms that then creates the images. So we do this by placing a camera in the grid on top of the stage and having infrared emitters all around the performance space. The computer program looks for what it calls blobs, which are basically when enough pixels change from the camera's point of view that it assumes that a person is in that space. Those coordinates are what then is moving that entire grid around. Now this is really exciting. This means that the most logical part of a dancer's movements, where they move their arms, or where they move across the stage, or whether there's 1, 2, or 3 dancers on stage, is able to create this really artistic, beautiful image. Dancers are incredible beings. They're able to charge the space with their performance. They're able to share emotion, narrative, and context just by way of moving. Now that charge, it's tangible, but you can't see it. You can really feel it, but in a sense, it doesn't exist in a fixed way. Motion tracking technology allows us to illustrate that charge. It allows us to take the energy that's around the dancer and create a secondary artwork from that information. This next video that I want to show you is a solo that I created in collaboration with one of my dancers, Juliana, and was programmed by my collaborator, Dylan Uramovich. Solo was about 7 minutes in its entirety, and the whole thing was improvised. We researched it a lot, and Juliana had some really set rules that she had to follow while she was performing it each night. She was only allowed to look upstage. She had to move from one corner to the opposite corner. And she had to keep trying to find parts of her body to press forwards in the space as she was moving. But outside of that, she had a lot of freedom. While we were making the solo, we were talking about this trajectory that she had to go through, and what about that trajectory we wanted to highlight. And we talked a lot about space and time, but also force and whether she should be rushing or whether it should have a reverence to the movement. We decided to keep it very grounded and fairly slow as she moves through the space. We also wanted to think about, with the story, what was something that, what could the projection add into that storyline? And we were thinking about what could she leave behind? Now, certain reptiles shed their skin as they move through different parts of their life. And so we thought about, what if we created almost like a abstracted version of scales that she could leave as this very set structure that was now in her past as she moved into this free space in front of her. Now, I said that the solo was improvised, and Juliana is one of the most creative dancers I've ever met and definitely ever worked with. And I'll give her rules, but really, I didn't know what she was going to do each night. What the technology allowed was for her to have complete freedom of what she needed to do each night in order to experience that solo. If she needed to stay in the downstage corner for 4 or 5 minutes out of the 7 in order to be really grounded and able to move through the space, that was fine. If she wanted to move through the first part of the space quite quickly, that was fine also. Technology allowed her to bring her whole self into that performance. She didn't have to worry about specific scores or notes that I'd given her. She was in complete control of the entire space and all the lights and all the imagery for the whole section, which was really quite beautiful. I found that the combination of dance and technology allows me to make more human work. It allows for that freedom because the dancers don't have to follow specific parts of the stage or be in set spots on particular counts. They're allowed to interpret it a little bit each night. And it also allows me to think about that combination of logic and magic that I've definitely found in dance and I've definitely found in technology, but I actually think just exists in everyday life. And for me, that's the most beautiful place to make art from, because it should really come from the most human space. So my goal is to keep making work like this, to keep using these two elements to see what else I can find. Thank you so much.